25 years ago, I built my first e-commerce site. Over that period of time, I've helped hundreds of brands scale to millions and millions of dollars. I'm going to show you all of the tricks and all of the things to watch out for. This video will save you money. I'm going to cover 5 basic sections: build, market, profit, logistics, and if you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you how to understand your data so that you're making the decisions that lead to success rather than just spinning your wheels every single time. Customers pay thousands and thousands of dollars for me to go through their website and help them figure out what's working and what's not. Many of our customers have 3 times, 4 times, even 5x'd their income just by following our basic plans. I'm going to give all of that information away to you today for free. So let's jump in. All right, welcome to section 1. Understanding the real world behind e-commerce. There is this misconception that you just launch a store and customers will flood in. Now, while that is somewhat true, if you have enough marketing and you built out the right store and you have a good product, that can absolutely happen. But of course, they make it easy to start a store because that's in the platform's best interest. So their business model is you get people to sign up and then you reduce churn by giving them enough things to keep them busy so that they keep their subscription going, okay? In the case of somebody like Shopify, they are looking for you to be successful because they take a portion of the payment. So they're incentivized to create tools in order to make e-commerce easier. I think this is a great mission. I think this makes sense. In the form of, like, if you're starting on someone like Etsy or Amazon, let's take Amazon for example. You start an Amazon store and then you have to ship them your products. You ship them their products, it lands in their warehouse, and if you don't sell anything, they continually charge you for the products that they have on the store. So if you're unsuccessful at doing the marketing piece or doing the sales piece, you are paying every single month, but that's what makes Amazon win so much. Not to mention, they also capitalize on advertising and competition between other people. So if we're going to do this, we need to pick a partner that has our best interests in mind. So this is why I recommend you start with a Shopify store, because the cost of ownership is a lot lower than if you start an Amazon store. Because if you start an Amazon store, you're going to be paying exponentially for the items that you have stored with them. If you start a Shopify store, you might be able to put them in your studio, or you may put them in your room, and you can start a little bit slower. My hope is that I'm going to give you the tools and the tricks so that you can turn what could take you 5 or 6 years and you can shrink it down into 1 or 2 years. All right, choosing your right product. Listen, it's been my experience that most entrepreneurs don't pick a product, the product picks them. So what I have seen the most with the people that I end up working with is there was a problem or an opportunity and someone got that itch to go and solve it. And then they started a business around it and started to scale it. Now, when they do that, it ends up, they see some immediate success, and then they get to a certain point, and then now they start coming down. All right, let's talk about what happens when someone has found a problem, and then they've engineered a solution. So if we have a look on this graph, they have found the problem. They have started their journey. So they've gone up, and they've seen some instant success. This is really great. And then eventually they plateau. And when they plateau, then what they end up noticing happening is they start to decline. And the reason they start to decline is because scale is difficult. Operations is really important when it comes to once you reach a certain point and you can't do everything yourself. People underestimate how much the founder magic leads to the success. And when you get to this point and you need to now operationalize all of the things that you're doing, there's a period where it now goes into a dip and then it goes back up again. This part here, which is known as the dip, or it's also known as the trough of sorrows, this can last a year, this can last 10 years. In my case, it lasted almost 20 years. And the reason being is that the industry that I was working in didn't exist when I started. The internet didn't exist. I was around when it started. And so it took a long time for the industry to mature to a point where we could be a successful business. Our business model was just way, way too early. Anyways, so this little dip here, this is what you need to get through as a business owner. Typically, this is from the $1 million to $3 million mark. That is what these things are going to help you do. So, talking about picking the right product. People are rarely product agnostic, which means they want to start a business, but they don't know what product they want to do. My experience is it's been the other way around. I will show you what I would do in that case if I was starting a new business. The first thing I would do, over to Google Trends, and I've got it here on the screen, and I would go in and I would type in a trend. So say I was going to start a Funko Pop business. I would go and explore the trends. I would have a look at what the search volume has been over the last 10 years. Let's go United States. We want to pick the United States because it's the biggest e-commerce market. And we have a look at what's happening with the trend. Now we can see that there was a roll up on the trend. It started getting more and more popular. Then we hit COVID. COVID had a major bump in most e-commerce traffic. And now we're at a point where we have recovered from COVID. Things are starting to get back into normal. Unfortunately, US is doing some things that are going to shock the supply chain. So it's very likely that we're going to see another spike. However, if we have a look at December 19th, or December 2009, before the COVID explosion, and we have a look at now, we are actually higher at December than we were before COVID. So all that's really happened is if you take out this anomaly, things are still growing as they were before. So what I would suggest, a person who's looking to start a business, is have a look at what the trends are around the product that you're going to be offering. And the reason is because you want to be in a market that's growing. You don't want to be in a market that's declining. If you're in a market that's declining, that means you're going to have to beat out everybody else. And generally, the people that are already in there have a better idea on how to do it than you will. Okay? So we've covered picking the right product. We've covered the dip. Now let's talk about building your brand identity. Branding, it's more than just a logo and a website. It's about how you communicate your trust and value to your customers. Let me explain. So, brands have a certain persona of customer, their ideal customer. And what they do is they look at what that ideal customer's behaviors are, what the other brands they use, what their likes are, and then they develop their brand to match that persona. So, as a new startup company, you can leverage those brands, just like those brands did earlier, to build out your personas and your logos and stuff like that. So one of the things that Apple did, hugely successful company, they looked at Sony. They were like, we want to be like Sony. We want to have high quality products. We want to be clean cut. We want to be high price point. And we want to be the best. And so what Steve Jobs did is he modeled his brand for Apple after Sony. Interesting thing happened. Apple outperformed Sony, and now Sony is trying to do the same thing that Apple did, right? So it does go back and forth. So when you are building out your brand, you want to create a persona. And what a persona is it's a one-page sheet that talks about the customer. So it's got a picture of who the customer is. Use AI to generate out a picture. It's got what other brands that they like, what their current behaviors are, what their price points are, so that when you're designing your logo, when you're designing your website, when you're designing your sales copy, you're speaking to that particular person. All right, let's get into section 2, why marketing is everything. A lot of people, and this is a mistake that I made, was go and build the product first before they go and market. I've recently learned that it's actually better to do it the other way around. Go and market your product before you build it, because you need people to help test and figure out what it is that you're building. There is a great line, I think it's from 37 Signals, the makers of Basecamp: make all your mistakes when you're little, because when you're big and you make mistakes, that's when you really pay for them. So I want to talk about how e-commerce businesses fail because they don't allocate enough budget to effective marketing. So when you're getting started, the first thing you got to do, obviously you got to pick a product. This is the most important thing when picking a product. And this is where what we recommend is you want to have a look at the SEO search term. I showed earlier how you use Google Trends in order to see the search volume. Well, I'm going to show you a different tool that we use in order to figure out what the search volume of a particular keyword is. So let's go over to my screen. All right, so we used to use Ahrefs, which is a website here. Let me show you here, ahrefs.com. We used to use Ahrefs in order to figure out search traffic, but there's some big drawbacks with using Ahrefs, mostly because they use desktop numbers as their primary metric. The reason they do this is because when they started 20 years ago, everybody was on desktop. But now e-commerce is mostly driven by mobile traffic. And so what we did on our side is we switched to a SEO tool that allows us to split desktop and mobile. You can't do that on Ahrefs. And the numbers that come in SEMrush are quite a bit lower than they are on Ahrefs. In my opinion, I prefer to do the lowest thing rather than like the most optimal thing. And the reason I do that is because it sets expectations correctly. So we use SEMrush in order to figure out what our search traffic is. So if you wanted to go and search a keyword here, we'll use the same keyword. Now let's see if this is their search funnel. Okay, hold on. Let me just log in here. SEMrush, not a cheap tool. You know, it's a few $100 a month in order to do this. But if we wanted to go and have a look at a keyword, let's do that here. So up here, we can switch it to mobile. So if we have a look at mobile for this keyword Funko Pop, there are 368,000 searches a month for this keyword. Now, it's got a high keyword difficulty. It would take a little bit to get to that. It would take a couple years and some serious focused effort, but it means that there is enough traffic there in order to make it worthwhile. So 368,000 per month. If you get 20%, and that's usually what we think of as a click-through rate for a 1 to 3 position. So you have 303, so 368,000, oops, 000 times 0.20, you're looking at about 7,000 people that are going to come to your site. From that 7,000, if you have a 1 or 2% click-through rate, you're going to sell about 100, 140 a month. And that's just on one keyword. So when we're thinking about this stuff, especially when we're talking about like high intentional advertising, and I'll get into intentional versus interruption in a moment. But basically what you want to do is you want to glob all of your keywords together to get the search volume that you're looking for. And when you're looking at search volume, you've got to start off slow. You got to start with like the 500 or 600 searches per month. And those ones are easier to rank for. And then you continually stack them on top of each other in order to get the search volume you need. All right, so let's go on to the next piece. And I kind of mentioned this just a brief second ago, but the different types of marketing. So you have 2 types of marketing. You have interruption-based marketing and you have intentional-based marketing. Intentional-based marketing is someone has a problem and they're searching for a solution. The best thing to do is think about Google when you're doing intentional-based marketing. People go to Google, they search Google, and they find what they're looking for. Then you have interruption-based marketing. So someone is enjoying their entertainment and then they get interrupted by an ad and they're like, this is something that I actually have a problem for. I'm going to go follow and learn more. So that is something like Netflix, you have podcasts, you have Facebook, you have Instagram. All of those things are interruption-based marketing. The interesting thing with TikTok is it's actually both. It's both interruption-based and it's intentional-based because people are using it to search. And this is what's made it such a valuable property is that you've got both of them on there. Now, Google and Facebook are still crushing it in their own individual markets. But when you're talking about your product, you need to understand, is your product a intentional based product where someone is looking for a solution? Or is this a interruption-based product where someone is going to buy it when they see it? When you're starting out, you want to figure out which one is the best. Now, I use a tool called Thought Metric, and I'll bring it up here. Thought metric is an attribution tool. And what does that mean? Attribution allows you to see which network on your website is bringing the most amount of people. So this is why, when I was talking about why you need a lot of people to come to your website and why you need to start first with marketing, is you need to see what that customer journey is, what they're going through. So I use Thought Metric as a tool in order to tell me how many people come in through organic search, how many directly type in my URL, how many people come in by email over a long period of time, so I know where to focus my marketing efforts. Now, if you want some help figuring out those numbers and all that sort of stuff, stick around. I'll show you how to get there. Next, we're going to talk about paid ads versus organic growth. Essentially, we're going to talk about interruption versus intentional marketing. So the best way to understand this, Google is mostly weighted towards intentional marketing, meaning someone goes to Google, they type in what they're looking for, they find an SEO result or a Google Marketplace, they click on it, it takes them over to the website, and then they go and purchase. Versus Facebook, which is interruption based. You're on Facebook, you're enjoying what you're seeing there. Maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Threads, maybe it's Reels, whatever it is. And you're getting an ad, and that interrupts what you were working on before, and then that brings you through to the product and you go and purchase it. It's really important that when you're starting off, that you figure out which one of these markets generates you the most return on your ad spend. So some products are better suited towards intentional and other products are better suited towards interruption. Now, both channels have difficult challenges to overcome. Google, you got to figure out how to make sure your ad copy is good, how to make sure your headings are good, and make sure that you have a good offer so that people click through to your site. On Facebook, you have to make sure that you're able to capture their attention. Is it interesting? Is there a clear call to action? Can you get them off of the Facebook platform onto your site to remove the distractions? One of the tools that I use is Thought Metric. And what Thought Metric does is it shows you your attribution of the sites or an attribution of the customers coming to your site. Let me pull it up here for you. All right, so if we are on Thought Metric website, so what Thought Metric allows you to do is it allows you to break down what your advertising spend and what your impact on your customers are. Basically, their customer journey. And it breaks it out into attribution. So it shows how many customers see both. So they're right here. So you can see the breakout, Facebook, email, organic search. So you can start to see where your orders are coming through. And the reason this is important, and this goes back to what I was talking about with starting with marketing, is you need to see which one of these is the one that you should invest most of your time and energy into. So if you have an intention-based product, so someone who is looking to solve a problem, you go Google. If you have an interruption-based product, someone who maybe wants to buy a t-shirt or maybe they want to buy a backpack or something like that, then you want to go Facebook. And it's very important to see which one of those networks are the ones that convert the best. You pick the one that is the strongest, and then you go and you optimize that one. Now, once you reach a certain amount of scale, you're going to be hitting it on all channels. Generally speaking, this is the order that I recommend people do it in. Step one, you want to invest in SEO because that's a long-term investment, but it's relatively free. You just make content and Google indexes it and it shows up. The second thing you want to do is organic social. So doing organic social, again, it's a free platform. You post content, people see it. Once those two are done, then you want to look at email. Email is still the best way that people interact with their computer. It's still the number one way they interact with their computer. And it's the lowest cost to send an email. Sending an email is a couple cents. So it's very, very low to send an email to a customer, and it converts very, very well. After you've done those three, then what we recommend is you start looking at, okay, let's look at intention-based. Now, this is product dependent, right? Like, so if you have a product that's mostly interruption-based, then you're going to start with paid social. If you have a product that is most intentionally based, you're going to start with Google Ads. And you're going to go and you're going to optimize those different pieces. All right, so that is paid advertising. That is interruption versus intentional advertising. The next thing we're going to talk about is how do you add social proof to your marketing efforts. All right, let's talk about the power of social proof. So social proof is testimonials, reviews, user-generated content, also known as UGC. And they're all designed to help build and convert visitors into buyers. There is one book that gets mentioned all the time when we're talking about the powers of persuasion, and that is the book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. Book came out a number of years ago, actually early internet times. I remember reading this book and learning about the different items for persuasion. He recently actually relaunched the book in 2022 with a couple of updated things around the internet and stuff like that. Now, the 6 principles of persuasion are reciprocity, scarcity, commitment and consistency, liking, consensus, and social proof. So all 6 of those are important when trying to persuade somebody. Now, here is the key. If you do this right, reviews can hit 4, maybe even 5 out of the 6 items required to persuade somebody. This is why reviews are so critically important, okay? With reviews, you can hit commitment and consistency, you can hit consensus, you can hit social proof, and you can hit liking. You can also, if you build your deal correctly, you can also hit the scarcity piece of it. Let me explain. So, reciprocity, okay? So you can give a free gift and a lead magnet. That will get the reciprocity. So you've given something to the user, and then they are now going to come to your brand. So that's the first one off the list, okay? You use scarcity as a limited time offer. Buy now, or the FOMO, fear of missing out. So now we've gotten the 2 pieces of powers of persuasion. Now let's go into the review piece, and the reviews are going to capture our last 4. So with reviews, obviously you get social proof. Someone gets it, they take a photo of it, they leave their comments on it, and that gives you social proof that someone else has liked the product that you're buying. There's the additional added to that. If other people have the ability to like the review, hit the like button, they now have liking. So if someone has gone and done user-generated content, they hit the likes on Instagram or on Facebook and stuff like that, you now get the liking piece. Consensus, this is where you want to think about volume of reviews, right? You want to get to a number of reviews so that it looks like enough people have tried out the product and you've got consensus around it, which removes some of the risk for a lot of the people, okay? And commitment and consistency. This is the content in the review, right? You want people to write reviews about how your product is consistent, how your product fulfills on the commitment that you gave to them. And so when you're generating these reviews, when you're requesting reviews from people, you want to give them some talking points. Hey, maybe talk about our consistency. Hey, maybe talk about our commitment to you. How did that work out? If you give them writing prompts, then they will write reviews based on those writing prompts. Welcome to section 3, the financials that you need to understand. So costs go beyond just your product price. You have labor cost, you have overhead, you have incidentals, you have mistakes. Mistakes often cost a lot more than people think they do. You lose money on the mistake, and then you lose reputation if the mistake was big enough. So there is a lot of external costs which harm your profitability. Now, there is another piece of this, which is you have to account for shipping, taxes, merchant fees, returns, all of that part. So the finance part of it is the most difficult. And it's the thing that if you don't pay attention to it, you can end up going broke while you're trying to go rich. Okay? So for this, I'm going to offer a resource. This is the easiest thing to get started on it. It's called Profit First for E-commerce Sellers. Go and read that book. It will tell you how to organize your products. It will tell you how to put money away, and it will tell you how to make profit first. So then as you scale, you're now able to make sure that you're covering things like labor, marketing, and operations. The thing I will mention, in my experience, labor by far is the most significant expense. So it is also the most important because you can't do any of this stuff alone. You need people to do it. You might think you might be able to replace a number of people with AI, and that is possible. However, generally now, speaking with AI, you need to have somebody who has subject matter expertise to review the AI to make sure that it's working. Now, AI can go and generate out some average level work. But if you want true high performance, you're going to need to pay for it, and that's going to cost you. So this is why you definitely want to keep an eye on your labor. Now, you have two ways in order to stabilize your finances. You have recurring, so people who buy the same thing over and over and over again, or you have reoccurring, which is people who continually come back to you to buy new things. When you're building out your business, you want to think long and hard about how you're going to have either a reoccurring or a recurring business model. And the reason that you want this is because when you get to a certain scale, you're going to need stability. You're going to need to be able to stabilize your income so that you can start bringing on these people so that they can help you grow the business. And if you think about it in a different way, when you hire someone, you are really just subscribing to them. A salary means that you are subscribing to their service on a monthly basis, and if they continue to provide value, you are going to continue to keep subscribed. So the subscription model is something that has been around since people have been getting paid. Okay, so the goal of any business is to get through that first piece and remove any of the volatility. Volatility and spikes in businesses is what breaks businesses. You want to steer away from surge traffic. You want to steer away from like massive expansions, because when you do that, that's when mistakes happen and that's what costs you. Building a business slowly over time, not too slow, but consistently over time is what leads to really big results. All right. So that's on the expenses. Let's talk about your pricing strategy. So we want to price your product for both profitability and competitiveness. Now, this comes back to when choosing a product. If you are choosing a product that is highly commoditized, this video is not for you. I don't do things on dropshipping. I don't do things on like, here's how you buy something and do product arbitrage, which is buy it from one supplier and resell it to another supplier. In my opinion, that is a losing game because the only thing that you can compete on is price. And when you can only compete on price, that drives down profit margins and it drives down the value. So what I recommend is that either you have a service-based business or you have a unique product, something that has a patent, something that you have designed yourself, something that you control the user experience of that product. There is an excellent book called Ask Your Developer, and it's by the founder of Twilio. And he talks about, and now this is in regards to software sales, but it means it's just as important for product sales, is that you can't buy differential. Right? So you can't buy something to set you apart from your competitors, because if you can buy it, your competitors can buy it. And the only way to have differential is to build it. You have to go and build something unique. You have to build it. You have to understand it. You have to keep it unique to somebody else, because it's the only way to be able to say, we have this, we've done this, and it creates basically a moat around your business. And having a moat is very important so that people aren't able to copy you. You want to make sure that your business is defendable, because there are a lot of copycats out there, and like copying someone else's business and improving the process is a technique in business, and it does happen all of the time. So let's talk about how you do the pricing. So pricing, the way that I recommend pricing, and this is a Gary Vee thing. You keep increasing the price until someone tells you to F off. That's basically it. When you're talking about e-commerce, what you want to have a look at is you want to have a look at your conversion rate. If your conversion rate is far too high, so if you're like 10, 12% conversion rate, it means that you can increase the price. If your conversion rate is low, you may have a problem with your lead funnel, so you got to make sure the leads are correct, but your price might be too high. So if your conversion rate is low and you're not getting any sales, have a look at your leads and make sure you have the right persona. You're going after the right customer. So you got to make sure the targeting is right. If you have too many conversions, you have too many people coming through and buying your stuff, then you can increase the price to reduce that. So it's a game of adding and removing friction. If you are not getting enough of the result that you want, you need to remove friction. If you're getting too much of the result, then you can add some friction to increase the price. And that's a balance game that you have to try out. So every product is unique. You're going to have to figure it out. If you want some help with this, I run an online community. You can go in there. You can DM me. I'll help you figure out exactly what the right pricing is. Help lots of people figure that out. And we can do it by the numbers. Okay. Now, let's talk about how we budget for scaling. Scaling is expensive. It's like way more expensive than you could ever imagine. And the reason is when you scale, things break. Mistakes get made, whole departments need to be rebuilt. This is why you need to make sure you have a good understanding of your profit and what your LTV to CAC ratio is. You want that LTV to CAC ratio to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1:3 to 1:5 or higher. If you have a really great LTV to CAC ratio, then what you can do is you can actually scale up your CAC, which is customer acquisition cost, and bring down your ratio. You can spend more and you will net out more profit at the end because you're now starting to scale. But if you're not watching those two numbers, you're not watching that ratio, if the CAC gets above the LTV, so if your customer acquisition cost gets above the lifetime value of the customer, that's when you're going to lose money. All right, welcome to section 4, logistics and customer experience. So shipping and fulfillment. This is a tricky one because shipping and fulfillment is different everywhere in the world. Now, I'm going to speak to my strengths, which is understanding the shipping in the United States. And the reason that I'm going to use shipping in the United States is because they have a very robust delivery network. They have DHL, they have FedEx, they have Purolator, they have USPS. It all works inside the US, and they can get anything to anywhere in the US actually within a day, which is quite remarkable of the distance that they have to cover. There's a lot of built-in infrastructure already in the US. And this is why it's so important, or not important, but this is why I recommend starting your business in the US and delivering to US customers first, because you can learn about how to run your business and do good customer service without having to worry about how do I make sure that I get this product from one side of India to the other side of India through third-party logistics people. So generally speaking, the more difficult it is to deliver something, the higher the cost is going to be. And the variable in that is how fast somebody wants it. So if possible, you want to have real-time estimates of what it's going to cost a customer to ship something. I generally, unless you're shipping in the US and your costs are fixed, don't include shipping in the total price. Now, free shipping is a key driver of sales. If you offer free shipping, people will purchase more. Now, if we talk about e-commerce in general, if there was one clear winner, well, if there's one clear winner, it was payments. But the second place winner of the e-commerce was the logistics companies. They make the most amount of money on making sure that your products get from where you are to where you need them to be. So when you're constructing your deal or when you're constructing your offer, you want to really take a long look at what your shipping costs are going to be, and you want to work those into the price. If you're able to restrict your market so that you can ship it and include shipping in your price, and this is why shipping in the US is much easier because you can put a fixed rate on the product in there. Now, some of the things that you might not consider is if people order multiple products and you're shipping multiple boxes, and now you've included all of the shipping cost in the single purchase, it can be you can actually end up in a place where you pay more for the shipping than you're making on the product. So you want to be careful about quantities, right? So if someone orders 10 t-shirts and the shipping is included, and a box of 10 t-shirts is bigger than what your cost for the shipping is, you want to run those calculations. If you want help figuring out those calculations, I'm going to mention on our community again. It's expertbymonday.com/community. Join there, send me a DM. I will help you work out your logistics for shipping. All right, next up, let's talk about returns and customer support. So there's a really great metric, which is it takes 5 positive interactions to overcome a bad one. And so as a business owner or an e-commerce company, you want to avoid you want to avoid negative interactions as much as possible, because 5 times the work gets generated when you have a negative interaction. And so I've seen a lot of these e-commerce brands get this wrong. They make it hard for people to return. And so if you think about it from the customer's point of view, they don't know your product. They haven't seen their product. Say they're buying a pair of pants and they don't know if they fit. If they're going to buy it from you, they want to take as little risk as possible. offering free returns is what's going to allow them to try your product and then return it back to you. And this is something that you want to work into your customer acquisition cost, because if you're getting free returns coming back and people are trying it out, you're building the trust with that person. Maybe those ones don't fit, but they can go and they can purchase another piece. Now, my advice is don't hold people into you don't get your money back if you get a return, but you can exchange. I don't think that is a good way to go about it, because then people feel like they're trapped and it's going to reduce the number of people that convert through, right? So you have to think of your returns as an investment on the future of the customer. And what this means is that you really got to get to know what your lifetime value of a customer is. And so if you know the lifetime value of your customer, and you know that each customer typically returns 1 or 2 items before they find their size, and I'm talking specifically about apparel here. So if someone finds a clothing company and that clothing company has a good fit, they like the product, they love the customer service, it's brand, it's the brand that they want to be, they're going to continue to buy from you. I know that in my own experience, that if I find a company that sells items that I love, price actually goes out the window. I just want to continue to buy the good thing. And so the first time you buy it, you try it on, you maybe buy 5 or 6, you see how it fits, and then you send those other ones back. So when you're talking about returns and customer service, you want to think about it as a long-term investment. So tracking what your LTV to your customer acquisition cost is, so the cost of the return gets integrated into the customer acquisition cost, and then the lifetime value of what someone is worth to you is your other side of the equation, right? And so again, I'll mention the community. If you want some help there, we talk about this stuff over at expertbymonday.com/community. Let's take a minute and talk about returns and customer support. It takes about 5 positive interactions with a customer to overcome a negative one. And so when we're talking about returns and customer support, this is the part of your business that you're investing in the long term. So you want to make returns as frictionless as possible. You want to have great customer service that gets them the return shipping label, or better, you provide them a return shipping label before they even get their product, so that if they don't like it, they can send it back, and you cut down on your customer service requests. But what you need to remember is that your customer service and your returns goes underneath your customer acquisition cost, because you're making an investment in the lifetime value of that customer. So ThoughtMetric, the tool I mentioned earlier, will tell you what your LTV of your customer is. So that number is really easy to grab. And then your customer acquisition cost, now ThoughtMetric only grabs it from your advertising. So you're going to need to take what your returns are divided by the number of customers that had the returns, and that gives you a metric per customer, and then you add that to your customer acquisition cost, because knowing what your returns are is going to be important, because as you scale up, those are also going to go up. So one thing to keep in mind is that when you are talking about your returns are not a negative thing. Returns are an investment on the future of a customer's lifetime value. So if you are understanding what your customer acquisition cost is and you want your LTV is, then you can start pushing both of those a little bit more. All right, next, let's talk about building trust with your customers. The importance of creating an exceptional user experience on your site. This is an interesting one for me, because it's easy for me to take for granted working with Shopify, all of the things that they do for me. However, if you were to start a WordPress site, you would have to get a hosting provider, you would have to install the code, you have to set up you have to configure all the plugins, you have to get an SSL certificate, then you have to get PCI compliance if you were going to go with a third-party payment provider. Now there are some out there, Braintree, PayPal, Stripe, you can go and get those types of people, but you have to set all of that stuff up, and then you have to go and manage it. The reason that I like Shopify is because you can go there and all of this stuff is done for you. You just go in, you add your bank account, you add your domain name, and you add your products. This allows you to focus on the business part of it rather than the technology part of it. All of these items, the SSL certificate, the fast loading speed, the good user experience. This all equates to great customer experience. And the bar for what a good customer experience is goes up every single day, because as other people build out their websites and make their experiences better, it means you have to push it higher. And so it's so critically important nowadays when you launch a website, if you want it to be successful, you've got to have all of those things in place. All right, welcome to section 5. This is avoiding common pitfalls. So first pitfall, expectation versus reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. Business is a blood sport. Just when you think you got it figured out, the world will show up and show you very clearly that you don't. The reason people often stick with business is because they're doing something they love. Okay? You have to pick something that brings you back every single day. Because if you don't, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to say, I'm out. I'm not going to do this anymore. Because it takes a crazy person to continually show up each day to get punched in the face. The natural state of a business is to die. And every day that business is trying to die. And you have to show up every single day and continually nurture it so that it stays alive. This is the hardest thing you will ever do. But the rewards on the other side are unlike anything else. The days that you have when you've successfully won, when you've passed a level, when you've solved a problem, there is no better feeling than that. Pitfall number 2, the shiny object syndrome trap. Often, things will get tough. You will end up in the trough of sorrows, or you'll end up in the dip. And you'll say, oh, this is too difficult. And then you will see something else, and you'll say, oh, that looks better. I'm going to go over to that. And then they will go over to that one. And this will happen over and over and over and over again. Every business is $100 million a year business. At least that's what Alex Hormozi often says. I tend to agree with him. But the key to that is you have to stick it through the tough times. You got to pick something that you love and you got to focus on it. The shiny object syndrome is the part that business leaders always talk about when they say you have to say no. So often business leaders will say, the thing that I learned that was the hardest lesson was saying no. And that is what every business owner needs to learn how to do. Now, what the tricky part is where you draw the line. Do you say no to all new initiatives, or as part of your business model to bring on new initiatives? Do you say no to, oh, we're going to build this website, but we won't build this type of website? And this is where niching down becomes really important. But before you go and niche down, if you remember back in the beginning, you want to look at the trends. You want to see what search volume is available for that particular niche that you're going into so that you make sure that you pick the right niche. All right. The next pitfall, the power of testing. So people talk all the time about you got to test, you got to test, you got to test. But it's so difficult when you don't know what to test for. So when you're going to go and test something, first and foremost, you need to make sure you have enough traffic. You can't perform a statistical test on 2 or 3 users a day. You need 1,000 or more people in order to get a statistical difference. The next thing is you can't change more than one thing. You can only change one thing. And this was what takes so long. You need to put something out. You need to see a minimum of 1,000 people see it. You have to look at what the conversion rate and did you get the result? And if you got the result, great, you move on to the next one. If you didn't, you take a step backwards and you look at the last one. Figuring out what metrics to follow is one of the hardest things that you're going to do. And it takes a long time to figure out which ones that you're going to work on. Now, at my company, we do all of this hard work for you. We track all of that data and we present that to you in a monthly report. Let me go over to my screen and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, we are on our monthly report. So what we do is we have a look at what your site health is. First of all, do all the buttons work and go to where all the buttons need to be? Second, we look at flagged events, things that you need to fix that may be able to bring you more traffic opportunities. We look at your page speeds, how fast things are loading. I have, on this report, turned the page speeds off so you can't see whose report this is. Then we have a look at phase 2, which is marketing and sales. So we have a look at what your ROAS is, what your customer acquisition cost is, what your lifetime value is, so that you don't have to figure that out. We talk about your sales and marketing channels. So we do all the attribution for you, so you don't have to go and sign up for a Thought Metric account. We go and look at it and bring it out for you. Then we look at your sales trends. We look at what your seasonal changes are, because lots of businesses have seasonal changes, but we want to look at what your overall trend is over a 13-month period, not just over a 12-month period, because you want to see the difference between 2025 and 2024. Then when you have additional initiatives, so if you're working on organic search, if you're working on marketing, if you have a high-performing landing page, we're going to show you those different breakdowns. So organic search, you can see how many impressions that you are getting, so you know if you are hitting the number of things that you need to be able to hit in order to get the conversions that you're looking at. Then we'll show you what your click-through rate is. And now keep in mind, you have to pull these numbers from every place on the internet. It's not easy to do. Getting the numbers so that you can easily understand them is not easy to do. This is what we do for our customers, and this is how we help them scale. Then we have a look at the marketing side of things. We have a look at what your Google attribution is, what your combined conversion rate is, making sure that those are all staying in the green. Then if we are building you a high-performing landing page, which is what we recommend you start with, is you have a landing page, you drive people through it, and then you go and build out the website that has the customer service and all that part of stuff. Because remember, you got to start with marketing. You got to get enough people to your site. Then we have a look at the user experience. And the user experience, these are like how fast your pages are loading. What are your new versus returning customers? How many subscriptions do you have? What your conversion rates are? And when we present all of those reports to you, those are presented by myself. So I go through, I have a look at your business. I have a look at what you're trying to do. I have an understanding with you. We go over it with our team. And if that is something that is interesting to you, I've left a link down below. You can go book a call and you can talk directly with us. Or you can go to the community and the community will help you out. All right, let's talk about key takeaways. Number one, get your marketing sorted out. Get the customers coming to your site. Most businesses fail because they just don't have enough traffic. The internet has a virtually unlimited amount of traffic. What you want to be looking for is where do you get the most amount of impressions for the lowest cost. Now, this might not just be on the internet. We actually ran an advertising campaign on bus tail ads, so on the backs of buses. And we did it in a city that was the second most popular city for a specific brand. And because people were stuck in traffic behind the bus tail ads, the number of direct users to the website that would type in the website was super, super high. And it became an excellent acquisition channel because the number of impressions people got was super, super high. But the cost per impression, right? Like you have a bus that's driving through a city and you're getting tens of thousands of people looking at that ad every single day. And that ad is costing you maybe $1,000 a month. So the cost per impression, super, super low. But a lot of people fear regular advertising because it's not trackable. So Rory Sutherland talks about track what you can, but base your decisions on what the results are. Don't base the decisions on the tracking. And so you have to get a number of impressions. That's just marketing number one. The more people who see your stuff, the more people who will buy it. So key takeaway, start with marketing, build up the marketing. Number two, you've got to make sure the experience is correct. So you've got to make sure it's fast. Do all the buttons go to where all the buttons are supposed to go? Do the pages load at a reasonable speed on an iPhone? So like they're getting mobile networks are usually quite a bit slower. Older devices, it's another piece with the speed, is older devices, older Android devices, they can be slower to render new website stuff. So a lot of people will come in and they want to do a big flashy homepage and they want to have videos playing on it. But what they don't understand is that big brands can push a lot more marketing dollars through to their website than they can, so they can afford to make these mistakes. Apple is one that I often talk about. And Apple has a bunch of videos, interactive elements on their website. Well, they don't have the overhead of Shopify in order to make sure that experience is as good as possible. They can optimize everything down to the very single pixel so that they have a very quick and easy acquisition channel because they have a strong brand to leverage off of. So, in review, marketing number one, make sure you get enough impressions. Make sure the experience is great for customers to come through. And number three, make sure you're watching the numbers. If you watch the numbers, you make your decisions based on those numbers, then you can't fail. You can try something, you can see if it works. If it doesn't work, you can back up and go the next way. All right, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to have conversations about this, join the community. I'll put the link down right here. If you want to talk about how we can help your business, I run a business called Sunbowl Systems. I will put the link to book a call down below. That's it for me. Have a good one. We'll catch you later.